Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our series, our Conversations with series. This is a series that I've been very happy to have started several months ago, getting on various guests, people that are running for statewide offices, county offices, assembly seats, county boards, school boards. I've had a lot of you guys out here. We've had a lot of interest. We've had guests such as Adam Fisher, Orlando Owens, Joan Beglinger. We've had a lot of folks on here, and I want to keep these conversations going because this is one of those things I think is so incredibly important to me that we get the information out to folks. Like I've told you guys before, a lot of people don't watch TV. You've cut the cord. You don't watch, cable TV. You don't watch satellite TV. I mean, let's be real. Who wants to pay $150 and have 500 channels and nothing to watch? Not me. But people don't do that anymore. They cut the cord. And on top of that, as far as AM FM radio is concerned, how many people do you think actually have time to listen to AM FM radio? Not many anymore. But where do you get your information from? Online? Most people tend to read the headlines and nothing more. But what they do, and that's, you don't want to just read the headlines, but they do watch video. And that's where I want to make sure that we can be the service to you guys to bring these candidates to give a human perspective as to who they are, why they're running, have these conversations, and hopefully have a few laughs and be informative at the same process here. My guest tonight, this is going to be an awesome show because if we take a look at who are some of the most controversial figures here in the state of Wisconsin, probably at the very top is a gentleman by the name of Robin Vos, Speaker of the Assembly, representative out of the 63rd Assembly District. Now, love him, hate him, whatever. Everybody has their opinion. But for quite a while, I think it's since 2014, he hasn't had a primary opponent. Well, this year is going to be a little different because there's a gentleman who has stepped up, and I've had the opportunity to speak with this gentleman. Last week, we probably had a good 20, 25-minute conversation. I thought it was a phenomenal conversation. I find this gentleman to be very well-versed in the Constitution, American First principles, it is my honor to bring him on here. He's going to be Robin Vos's primary opponent here for the 63rd Assembly District. Ladies and gentlemen, let us bring on Adam Steen. Adam, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having me, Ed. I appreciate it.
I gotta fix the screen. So yeah, let's get both of us on here.
There
we go. I figure if anyone's gonna be small, it should be me and not the guest because what do you need to highlight me for? I'm just a dude with a studio in the middle of nowhere. But
somebody's got to do it. It's okay.
It's good times though, and I love the conversation. We've had a chance to talk. We were just talking. We talked last week for a minute, and I just thought it was a phenomenal conversation because we talked over several different things, some of which was your background, why you're running, things like that. And I think probably to kind of really kick this off here, let's talk a little bit about your background, who you are. I mean, obviously you're a patriot, you're a father. Two beautiful girls that I saw, husband. One of the key reasons I think any of us do what we do is for our children.
You got it.
Kind of inform us, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Let's go back to high school. I grew up in Muncie, Indiana on a farm. My parents were in the housing industry. You can look at my website and read my bio, but we worked a lot. We baled hay, we hauled blocks, we cleaned up around the job sites, and that was the life that we had. I played sports, I was in choir, and I graduated high school, and a fair amount of my teachers went up to school in Watertown, Wisconsin, to college at Maranatha Baptist Bible College. So I went off to Maranatha, spent 4 years there, played NCAA D3 soccer. It was an amazing opportunity.
Okay.
And then actually got a job at Horicon at John Deere in the assembly line as a welder. I knew I wanted an engineering degree, and I really did. And I thought,
right,
what better of an opportunity than to actually get my hands dirty and kind of apply the principles that I needed to learn from the beginning.
Welding will do that for you for sure.
Oh, man. So I had a blast. I worked, I think it was almost a year at Horicon. I got an internship, and one of the guys that was an engineer, he said, you should probably go get your degree. So I went off to Madison and got a biological systems engineering degree. We talked about this a little bit before. That it used to be called, probably in 2008, they changed the name. It used to be called agricultural engineering. So 75% of our classes were with mechanical engineering students, but it was on the ag side of campus, and it was so much fun because there was only 55 to maybe 75 kids in our entire department.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like the engineering school had thousands of students, but it was such a tight knit group that we got to know each other. We knew our professors. I still talk to my structures professor, even our shop teacher I talked to on
Mhm.
Facebook yesterday. So it was just a great opportunity to have an education at a big school, but have a
Right.
smaller department. So I met my wife, Hannah. She lived across the street. Actually, we built senior design project was building quarter scale tractors, and she was
Okay.
on the design team with me. So we had an absolute blast. We both decided. Somebody said, if you can build a tractor together, you could probably should get married.
Well,
we
doesn't that go like what the joke is that if a husband and wife can survive a remodel,
Yeah.
then they're in a good spot for a long-term marriage.
You're exactly right. It was, I mean, she did a lot of the paperwork and writing the report and did some of the shop fab with me, and it's under stress, right? When you're put under
Yes.
pressure, you see who you really are. Just like athletics. I love interviews because you talk about athletics in life, and who you are on that field actually determines who your character, it shows who your character is, because you are under that pressure and you can't think, you react. And it's fun to do interviews like that because you can answer questions so simply because you know who you are based on that stress you're put under. So
Well, I think that's a really important distinction because I know there's some people that do interviews and they
yep.
they want to get the questions ahead of time. I personally don't do that, but I also
Mm-mm.
make my policy is I don't do gotcha questions.
Yeah.
It's never to
Sure.
put anybody on the spot. We want to have that raw, fresh, and organic conversation because,
Hmm.
like you said, it shows the true character. Because when you have that player out there who's arrogant, flamboyant, way over the top, just a total, you know what?
Yes,
Chances are what you see on the field is what you're getting off the field. The
you're
one who's,
exactly right.
expressing gratitude and humility and they're appreciating their team for their victory, even though they were like the star player. Chances
You
are that's
got it.
exactly who they are off field too.
Oh, excellent. You really got it. So we graduated from Maranatha, from UW.
Yep.
My wife and I actually both got ag engineering degrees. Um,
Okay.
and then we came down here to southeastern Wisconsin. We've got two daughters, Abigail, who is now 3 years old, and Ella is turning seven no, 8. Goodness, she's turning 8 in a week.
Right.
It's
Okay.
crazy. Time flies, absolutely flies.
Well, that's
And
awesome because she's a March baby, and I
yep.
just celebrated my 49th birthday yesterday, so I gotta give a
Oh,
shout out to all the March babies
excellent.
because, I got nothing but love for them.
Excellent. My mother was born 2 days before on the 17th. So it's the 17th, and then Ella was the 19th. So she was so excited.
Wow.
They were right close to each other. Um, but like job experience. So growing up on a farm selling in the housing industry. And then I came up to Wisconsin after school. I got a job as a service manager at Mid-State Equipment, the John Deere dealership.
Yep.
So I've had the experience, and I was a service manager for 3 or 4 years, and then got a job at Putzmeister over in Sturtevant to use that expensive degree. They make concrete pump trucks. It's
That's a good
I
company
tell
to be
people that
working for, but yeah,
I know.
you
So
definitely get skills and experience there.
yes. So in 2020, actually, in June of 2020, I actually lost my job at Putzmeister, and I was at an event. It was a week ago up in Waukesha, uh, and I really thought it important that the people understood that not very many legislators or assemblymen lost their jobs
Mhm.
last year or 2 years ago, and it wasn't just the hospitality industry; it was across the board that men and women lost their jobs due to the decisions that were made by our legislators, or the lack of decisions, if you will.
Yeah.
So it it kind of puts it into perspective that I'm not here to change the world, but I am here to stand up and say we need to have our eyes open. We've made a mistake. We've allowed our legislators to get off the hook with zero ramifications or repercussions for their decisions. And I think it's time that we put our money where our mouth is and stand
Well,
up.
and I think that's definitely something, and I want to touch on that there because I don't want to put the cart before the horse just yet.
Sure.
But I definitely want to get into that because for me, it's a huge sore spot when we talk about everyone that lost their jobs,
Yep.
especially during 2020.
Yep.
Um, I never really speak about what I do professionally on
Yep.
air, just because what I do here is very separate from my
It
day to
is.
day employer. Um, but I can tell you, I've seen firsthand the devastation that it's brought across.
Yep.
I am all over central Wisconsin. I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of different businesses. I've seen a lot of different businesses close, and they were wrecked. Some of them are still holding on by a shoestring, and it's heartbreaking. It just really is. And you're right. Everybody focused on the service industry because it was the one that took the biggest hit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that it also went into other areas such as your profession.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about dollars and cents, um, I I kind of skipped a little part in here. In 2018, I ran for Congress to replace
Yes.
Speaker Ryan when he stepped down. But since then, I paid a little bit more attention, and the statistic was, and it's gotten worse. But the average income, or not the average income, I'm sorry, the average savings for a family in the United States of America is $1,000 of cash in the bank. So
Wow.
to put that into perspective, I did not get paid for 6 months. I filed. The company said, "You fill out this paper." I've never filed unemployment in my life. We
Mhm.
didn't know what that was. We kind of worked all the time, so we didn't have a
Right.
choice to be unemployed. And when I filed, it took them 6 months before I got one penny.
Right.
So for every single person that's gone through this, like I said, across the spectrum, that is a long time without any income.
Yeah.
And that's something, like I said, we get the cart before the horse, but are a lot of people in the word in politics, they
Mhm.
kind of were insulated, if you would, from the
Right.
reality of the day to day.
I think there were a lot of people that were insulated, whether it be, right, wrong, or indifferent. When they
Yep.
started labeling certain people as, essential,
Yes.
and that just, God, that irks me.
Yep.
Because as far as I'm concerned, the janitor is probably one of the most essential people that's out there,
Exactly.
you
And
know.
to classify people by job, I mean, we kind of went away from this, right?
Mm.
There was the aristocracy, there was the small amount of middle class, and then there was the peasant. I mean, we got away from that for a reason. The middle class is what has held this country up for how many years? And to say that some of those jobs are more important,
Well,
sorry.
that brings up an excellent point because, I mean, are we a caste system? I mean, did we all of a sudden just get thrown back, several hundred years? And, the frustration of that was it's like, wait a minute, you're telling all these people that have invested their time, their money, their life, their blood, their sweat, their tears,
Yep.
everything into this business. They're not essential.
There you
Like,
go.
what kind of garbage is that? And why,
Mhm.
aren't they fighting? But we're going to get into that here a little later on because, again, like I said, I don't want to put the cart before the horse because we got to get into this part. You're running against Assemblyman Speaker of the Assembly, two different titles, but one
Yep.
individual, Robin Vos. And
Yep.
I'll ask you the question that how do I put it best here? Obviously, like I said, he's probably the most controversial figure here within the state of Wisconsin. And when you look at outside of his assembly district here, District 63, everybody seems to hate him.
Yep.
And I guess it really doesn't matter if you like him, don't like him outside of the 63rd. You need to
Mhm.
worry about the 63rd. If you don't want him as the assemblyman, then talk to your assembly people, no doubt. But you're dealing with an incumbent that's been there, if I recall correctly, since 2005. Guy's got a sizable war chest. I
Mhm.
gotta ask you, why?
I I get I should be better at this, right? I should be expecting this question, but it's really it's not complicated, and that's I think so many times when we get into this, I guess I should tell you this thing called politics. The
Yeah,
Journal Sentinel was nice enough to quote me, and I told him politics is made up of two words: poly, which is many, and ticks, which are bloodsuckers. So this shouldn't be what we're discussing. We should be discussing public policy. And if you want to be an average everyday person and you want to have an impact on public policy, you can't do it talking back and forth on Facebook or even these podcasts. I mean,
Yeah.
they're informational. It's great to do. It's great to be engaged and educate people. But if you're not you don't have a seat at the table, you're not actually going to affect change. So honestly, since 2018, I've told people very specifically, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? I said, I am willing to run, but I need the Army behind me to support a race. And that's what it came down to, is there were more and more and more people that were searching and searching for someone to run. And I said, I don't mind at all sacrificing, because
It's a huge sacrifice.
time, right? It is time, it is effort, it is energy. I've got 2 daughters that I would love to be playing with. And that, to me, it shows them the importance of why we have the freedoms that we have in our country. Honestly, my grandfather was in the 82nd Airborne. His friends and buddies are literally died and gave their lives so that we could have the opportunity to represent our fellow citizens. And that to me was all it took, is looking at the race, looking at people that were extremely upset about what was going on outside and inside the district. And I said, I'm more than willing to have the opportunity to almost ensure the freedom of my children, because we can talk about the Second Amendment, education, all of these topics. I want them to have the same chance I did. And the only way they're going to do that is if I stand up. So to sit back and do nothing, I couldn't do it.
Well, I think that's kind of an important thing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're saying to me, what I'm hearing is, the citizen legislator, the individual who steps up, when it's time to step up to ensure that these God-given freedoms are protected, because people need to, step up and do things. That's, why you do what you do, why I do what I do.
Exactly.
I happen to be fortunate enough that my platform has gave me a great audience that, these are smart people. They don't just talk to 1 or 2 people, but they talk, to a factor of 5, a factor of 10. And that's what I really enjoy about that, and getting the information out for an individual like yourself, stepping up and putting yourself in the public eye. It's a huge sacrifice. And in this particular instance, you're going up against an incumbent, regardless of where it is. Going up against an incumbent it is a Herculean task.
It is.
And obviously, Robin Vos there's some popularity issues there. And a lot of it stems from the topic we were talking about just not too long ago. Let's just go to the summer of 2020. We know that Tony Evers had one crack, for the emergency health order, state of emergency that he put out there. But it was done over and over again. I got into a bit of a back and forth with Robin Vos at one point, and it ended well. I'll say that. But in there, one of my biggest criticisms, and it's for him, and I think for any other assemblyman or senator, where were you guys? I get you were filing lawsuits, but where were you out here when there was, a protest out in Mosinee, when there was a protest out in Madison or in Milwaukee or Waukesha or any other place like that, saying, enough is enough. So I mean, what's kind of your take on all the events that have happened, especially when you look at the summer of 2020 going into 21?
So this is it's kind of a point of conflict when you deal with the legislature, right? So they like to say, how could we have possibly known that this was coming? How could we have possibly known that I'm going to jump topics a little bit, but the election integrity, how could we have known all of this stuff that could never have possibly been imagined in anybody's lifetime? And my rebuttal is, it's not the foresight, it's the action, right? So it would be nice to have experience so that you would understand what was coming. I had a fellow that was a salesman at Midstate, and he said experience is something you needed 15 minutes ago. And it was so true. He's so true. But back to your question, is when you look at what happened in 2020, our assemblyman from across the state multiple times said, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah.
And that, when I hear that term or that phrase, I really struggle, because it's not your hill to die on. My grandfather's friends have done that already.
Mhm.
And I'm not
Literally.
trying to belittle the military. That's what they sacrifice so that we can have these freedoms, and to watch someone trample those freedoms
Mhm.
and tell us that we can't go to church, that we can't go have birthday parties, but you can go to Walmart. They don't, it doesn't register with the normal person that's sitting back saying, I thought our Constitution was written to
Right.
protect life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? That was the contract that was formed.
Yeah, that it was.
So basically, my view is, it's not an excuse. You don't have an excuse that you couldn't do anything. It is, you chose to be silent, and that silence implies consent. And that, to me, is, it's unacceptable, because you are a representative of the people. And if the people are saying, we want to keep our businesses open, right? Like, this is a hard question to ask. Like, do you want to make money or do you not want to make money? No, we want to have that freedom to earn an income,
Right.
and to allow the government to take that from us. uh, I don't want to say it's unconscionable, but it really is. It's not rational.
Well, I think the thing that was most, there was a lot of things during that time that were damning. And
Yep.
I get it. You're dealing with a novel virus. You're dealing with
Yep.
something new. It's
Yep.
scary. The news reports, I mean, they were showing people with just scars all over their face from having the N95 masks on. You
Hmm.
were seeing all these bodies out there across the world. It was
Hmm.
terrible. No doubt
Yep.
about that. But does a pandemic supersede the law? I
Mm.
I would argue if we were talking
Mm.
airborne Ebola
Yep.
and say we were all dying in the streets and we had a plague doctor walking down the street with a, wheelbarrow talking about bringing out your dead,
Hmm.
we're dealing with societal collapse at that point.
Yes.
That wasn't the case in 2020.
No.
So when I see individuals saying, when should we start following the law again? My question is, why did you stop following it to begin with?
And that, you you hit the nail on the head, because I was talking to my, let's see, he was 18, 19 at the time, year old brother, and I said, when in the world's history have we quarantined healthy people? When has this happened? This hasn't happened for a reason, because it's not rational.
Right.
And you're exactly right. But again, there's one thing that you noted, that when did we give that up? We, as, I want to say, everyday people, because that's what
Mhm.
we are. The
Right.
mass majority of people are not engaged in this public policy debate. We have to first make a decision and say, we have to repent, because we failed. We did
Mhm.
not keep our legislators accountable. As you said, this the fellow I'm running up against right now has been in there for 20 years,
Right.
17 and a half in the assembly, and then before that, 10 years in the local office. But we we have to realize that we made a mistake in
Right.
sending them over and over and over. And once we realize that, and we're willing to make that concession, then we can move forward, right? Now we can say, my eyes are open. I've taken responsibility for my actions, and now I'm moving forward from that. Um, and that's really a critical step in looking at what happened in 2020 is, whoa, the
Mhm.
curtains, the blinders were pulled back. Now we see the reality of what a lot of people had never seen before behind that curtain. And I
Right.
think that's what their eyes are getting opened. If they weren't open when Trump was elected in 2018 before that, or 16 before that, their eyes are definitely become open.
Well, I think a lot of people were just, nobody imagined, if we had this discussion in 2019
Yes.
that a governor can shut down a state with the help of unelected bureaucrats,
Hmm.
nobody would believe you. They would
No.
actually believe that you were out in the woods there drinking with drinking with the Yeti and, messing with Sasquatch for his Jack Link's jerky, while the Wendigo came up and gave you a fifth of Jack Daniels. They would believe that before they would believe the story that we lived through the last
You're exactly
two
right.
years.
Oh.
But
Mm.
something you said just now, I think it was really interesting. So we have a lot of people that are essentially career politicians.
Yeah.
I know that the framers, when especially for the U.S. Constitution, the idea was
Mm.
to have a citizen legislator that
Yep.
John Shoemaker over here, who worked at as a cobbler, he
Yep.
would run for office. He'd go to D.C. for a term or two, then he'd go back and he'd start making shoes all over again.
You got it.
We kind of really gotten away from that when we start having people in their 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I know
And
with the
my
U.S. Senate's a little different because you're 6-year terms, but
I know.
something you have on your website I thought was kind of interesting, though. You were talking about a maximum amount. What you're thinking of. I mean,
Yep.
I just kind of want to explore that thought process
Yeah.
there.
So yeah, it's really fun you said that, because my mother said when you explain to somebody, you can't talk in these huge words that they don't understand. You have to tell them when the Constitution was written, we had people that, I mean, the country wasn't brand new, right? We had some history in living in this
Yes.
country. We had blacksmiths, we had waitresses, we had bartenders, we had bank owners, we had cowboy, we had all kinds of people in these professions that were in these communities. And you said it perfectly. They were going to go serve and then they come back to work.
Mhm.
They weren't going to retire and change their profession, if you will, as a public servant.
Right.
It was almost an honor and a duty to be able to be selected from your peers to go represent them. So when I ran in 2018, I was very, very specific. I said, in my opinion, based on what I've read through the Federalist Papers, through the founding fathers, the documents that they wrote, again, off to the side of the Constitution and their
Right.
history and their knowledge, they said, this is a job that you should enjoy for a season.
Mhm.
They even had that argument at the Constitutional Convention that
Yes.
should we actually limit government? And this is a really tough decision for a lot of people, because they think if you have a good person in office, you should leave them there.
Mhm.
And my gut says, if we were talking to our founding fathers, they might give you 1 or 2%
Right.
of the people that were in the offices maybe could fit that category. But
Right.
yet again, in my opinion, they knew that the heart of man is desperately wicked. And
Right.
they knew that even a perfectly good person that had 100% perfect, flawless intentions is going to fail after time. And I think that to me is what causes me to bring up the fact that it needs to be for a term, that we need to go there and serve and get back to work. And the six, like you said, it's a tough call because we've got our state senators that go to
Yeah.
Washington for 6 years. And then you start, well, should we change the length of term of offices? You can go into that really deep. But I think as a representative elected by the people every 2 years, after 6 years, I think you have served your purpose. And I think if we
Mhm.
have the mindset that other people are going to be alongside you doing the same thing,
Right.
then you will have a turnover that will cause, to me, honesty to be brought back into Madison. Not
Mhm.
just me standing up saying, I'll be the lone wolf that's going to leave in 6 years and it'll be all fixed, right?
Well, that's the hard part. I mean, there's a lot of people that say they're going to go to Washington and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do this. It's like, are you? Are
Yep.
you really? Or are you going to be kind of just gaffed off? And I think you can make the same thing to scale with Madison
Yep.
or whatever state capital. But I
Yep.
think in doing that, that's definitely a surefire way to get yourself ostracized. Now I know that they do this thing here where it's like, oh, the junior assemblyman, the junior congressman. It's like, no, how about just the congressman?
Yep.
How about that? And in keeping in line with that line of thinking there, if you were elected, how would you
Hmm.
build relationships with people to try
Mm.
to pass I call it an America First agenda
Yep.
because that's really where my heart's at. And we can once again to scale call it
Hmm.
Wisconsin first.
Hmm.
I was born into a military family. My father
Ah.
served in the Coast Guard for 26 years. My grandfather was in the Army. He served in Korea. I was in the Marine Corps. I moved all over the place. I was born in Milwaukee. I tried to escape Wisconsin like 9 times, literally. And I keep getting drawn back here. I'm at the point now where it's like home wants me. I'm here.
Yep.
But in all my travels, the thing that I've learned from everybody is that you get nowhere without building relationships. How do you see that working for yourself should you become elected into the 63rd Assembly District?
That's a very, oh, I love the question because I kind of have a little bit of experience. So if you remember my background, I spent 4 years at Maranatha Baptist Bible College. And after graduation, I was in University of Wisconsin-Madison for 4 years.
Yes.
So that's 60 square miles surrounded by reality. And it's true. Like I say it,
You're
some
not
people say
wrong.
it in jest, but I'm not kidding you when I tell you, even on what I would call a conservative side of a campus that large, that I had enormous potential to interact with people that I had nothing in common with, absolutely nothing. And I, it's not, well, I'm all that in a bag of chips. It's I learned the ability to communicate with others that I didn't agree with. And I think that you can't teach that, right? You can teach character, you can teach those values that are ingrained in your being and who you are. But to be able to take those values and bring them cohesively to another person, another human being, and have those conversations that aren't always fun and pretty, you, I don't know of another way except through my background that I've had
Of
to
course.
experience that. So that to me, having those experiences, working, I mean, in my zoology professor, I didn't grow up with some of the educational choices that they had in Madison, and I didn't do well in some of the first or 5 or 6 tests that I had. And I said, this is frustrating because I don't understand the background information. And I looked at her and I said, do you believe what you're teaching? And she said, some of this has to come by faith. And once we had that common ground, we didn't agree on it very, very much at all, but that we understood each other, that we both had a degree of faith in what we were teaching or learning,
Right.
that we were able to come to an understanding of, we mutually can agree that there's going to be disagreement, but we have to know that we can move past this and
Well,
not just sit here and argue.
well, I think that that's an excellent point you're bringing, but I find that to be something more rare these days because in today's hyper politicized world,
Hmm.
we are so incredibly tribalized,
Uh,
between the right and the left, and even within elements of the right, we got a
yep.
lot of tribalism going on in here too.
Hmm.
You're a rhino. It's like, do you even know what that means? Like, just throwing that out there. But I think the hardest part is finding that individual who you can say, you know what, I don't agree with you. You don't
Yep.
agree with me,
Yep.
but I understand where you're coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. What are our
Hmm.
commonalities and what can we work from here? That's not, that's the goal, I would think.
Agree.
The issue I think is when you're dealing with somebody, say on the left, how do you argue with somebody? How do you come middle ground with somebody who doesn't want to meet you in the middle? I don't have an answer for that. But I think for people on the right, it really has to be about building those coalitions, building those groups of
Hmm.
people, and then starting to work with the more moderate left members, moderate Democrats.
You said something that triggered in my brain. When you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with an actual representative. So the goal is that we are citizen legislators, right? We go to
Right,
Madison, we represent the people in our district. And I've found, especially when I ran for Congress in the 750,000 people in the first congressional district, that every single person didn't grow up on a farm in the county like I did. That
right.
they lived in this city environment that was much different than me. Now, having moved into the city and moved back out again in the last 3 years, I got to experience that. It's it's a different mindset. But what
Yeah.
I'd like to bring forward is, when you're talking to a representative of these people, I've lived in both worlds, if you will. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if it's a conservative district or I don't want to say a left-leaning district, but a non-conservative
Sure.
district. Republicans, Democrats, we break up by color, but the people have the same needs. They want
Mhm.
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you can have those conversations, not, I don't like you as a person. I
Right.
want to do what's best for the people that I represent, and I know even if you have the personality conflicts that you would like to do the same for your constituents, it changes the discussion. It doesn't.
Right.
It's not a personality conflict. It's how can we help come together for the sake of the people that we represent.
Well, and I'm a big fan of that, the idea of service to others and
Yeah.
creating value for the
Hmm.
people that either look up to you or that you serve. Because I
Hmm.
find that once you start creating value, all of a sudden you the benefits that you get from it just as a side effect they're insurmountable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just ridiculous once you start creating that value, and it's something. It took me a long time to learn personally, and just in my
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships. Uh, and I think that's hard because when you go into the political world, you deal with egos and personalities and my idea of this and this is my seat or any number of things. So
Hmm.
I think that's it's a hard thing for I think a lot of people to wrap their heads around, right, as
It
well.
is.
And so
It is.
I want to go into the chat room here because we have a few comments. And
Sure.
guys in the chat room, I want to thank you guys, number one, for the birthday wishes, but number two, for keeping it civil. Because to me, it's really big that everyone respect the forum, and it's a big deal.
Mhm.
Stephanie Suchek, I don't know if you have had a chance to meet her. If you haven't,
I
I
haven't
highly
yet.
she's up in the Door County area. She's their chairman for the Republican Party there in Door County.
Excellent.
Phenomenal human being. Just I can't say enough about her. Every time I've been on a show with her, she does nothing but elevate the conversation. But just some of the comments here that she mentioned when we were talking about the citizen legislator, and I'll
Hmm.
put the comments up here. She makes note that I think what some of us want is even if the legislator was somewhat restricted, is that they
Hmm.
could do something because of who's governor. We want our representatives
Hmm.
to speak on our behalf and to be our voices.
Hmm. And
And which is, I think, something you had talked about. I mean, if you want to care to elaborate on that a little more.
but that again, when I say this isn't a hard task, I'm going to elaborate just for a second. Somebody asked me, "What is your
Please.
platform?" Right, and I said, um, "Anybody could do this if they're willing to answer the questions because you know what the Constitution says." So my platform is not complex. It's very simple. It's we have a document. So God formed gave individuals individual liberties. He gave us these rights that are inalienable to individual citizens, and those citizens formed a society, and that
Mhm.
society formed a contract with a government so that that government would protect those rights. This is the system in which I want my kids to be raised. I don't want the government to be able to control the lives of each citizen. They should be
Mhm.
protecting those rights. And you're exactly right, because without a representative that wants to do that, look, we are there, right?
Right.
We're at that point where we've seen the fruit of what you and I are discussing right now. It's not theory. It's not what's conspiracy theory. Like you said 2
Well,
years ago, this would be conspiracy theory.
here, let me give you a fun conspiracy theory,
Go
and
ahead.
then I want to get to Lee's comment because it's a great question here.
Okay.
So, as my son would say, "Dad, you're not old, you're ancient." And I'm like, he's 10, and he takes after me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're not wrong, brother." I said,
Yep.
"My knees aren't arguing with you." But I remember back in the mid to late 90s when Pick and
Hmm.
Save and all the grocery stores are coming out with their little discount cards you put on your key. And I
Yep.
was so vehemently against it. And my then wife was like, "Well, what's the problem?"
Yeah.
I'm like, all those people we know that are going to school for IT because of Y2K and the world's going to end. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, what would it take to bridge a program with
Yep.
another program to your shopping cart, to the DMV, to you name it?
Yep.
What would it take? Just a really
Nothing.
good program."
Yep. Stroke of
Oh,
a
that'll never happen. Okay, fine.
pen.
Well, lo and behold, it happens on such a
Mhm.
level because what you come to find out is those discount cards. Yeah, you're saving a
Mhm.
buck on, I don't know, your Lay's potato chips or whatever it is
Yep.
you're getting. but they're selling off your information. They're selling you, you get these coupons in the mail that are like laser focused on you.
Huh, that's weird.
But now let's take it to 2022.
Hmm.
Technology is rapidly advanced.
It is.
We have, the SWIFT system, credit cards. We're essentially a paperless society in terms of money.
Yep.
Look what happened in Russia, where they
Oh,
shut down all of the credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, Netflix, Spotify, you name it. We're not doing services over there like that. And I'm even seeing stories right now where somebody's saying, why doesn't Elon Musk just shut down all the electric vehicles? And it's like, if he could do that, like that's a reason not to buy that. And it sounds very conspiratorial to your point, but look at what's happened. I mean, just the last 2 years alone, but you can go back to the 90s and it was all there.
It was. And
It's
that's,
like Brave New World,
oh,
just really bad
man.
script.
But that's exactly right. And so many people so my great grandmother died she lived with us the last 7 years of her life. She died at 102 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
if I could take her, she was born in, anyway, we can go through her background, but
Yeah.
she lived in Warren, Michigan. They had the first tractor in the entire city. It's just amazing to see what she's come through. But if she were sitting here and you and I are talking over on a phone that fits in our pockets and we can see each other and clearly
Yes.
articulate, like it's unimaginable, but it's the reality in which we live in, and we have to wake up and say, this happened for a reason, right?
Yeah.
We're here at this time, at this place for a reason. No matter what your belief structure is, I believe we're here. Every one of us is here for a purpose,
Mhm.
and we have to take responsibility for our actions in this time.
Yeah.
And that's extremely critical.
Well, and it's a hard thing, I think, for a lot of people to realize. Yourself running against an incumbent.
Yep.
I'm sure there's probably not something you thought about, 5, 6 months ago. Like, yeah, I want to throw my hat in the ring. Why not?
Yep.
I think about what I'm doing here. It's like it is a privilege to have these conversations with individuals like yourself. It truly is. And going to a lot of these events, being able to speak and talking to folks, it's been a privilege. It's been an honor.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't mind hanging out with my son upstairs playing whatever the latest video game is. I grew
Yep.
up in that Nintendo age, so seeing his
So
stuff
did
is
I.
like
Oh,
it's like super cathartic, I like
yeah.
really enjoy it. But his freedom hinges upon what it is I do, whether or not I'm
Exactly.
involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't be that person who's like, I'll just let someone else handle it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I'm a big fan of comic book lore. I always have been. I love the mythos of the hero protecting, the strong protecting those who can't protect themselves.
Exactly.
And if I'm going to preach it, I have to live it.
Oh,
Just the same as I see what you guys are doing. Adam, please take it away.
you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. I'm serious. When you said you have to practice what you preach, I never took the opportunity to thank you. And I talked to a couple folks that are in the military, and they don't know how to reply. And I can't help but thanking you for your
It's weird.
service.
Yeah.
I know it's weird. I've been told it so many times, but if people would teach their kids to respect not just the police officers, but to respect the men and women who have sacrificed a portion of their lives
Yeah.
so that we can have this conversation. And whether it's you and I having the conversation about protecting the Constitution,
Mhm.
you also served to protect others to have the freedom to disagree.
Right.
And that is it's so important that we realize that it's not just left or right. It's having the freedoms to have this discussion, no matter what side you pretend or actually fall on.
Certainly.
And the last part of that is, you said we actually have to act. We can't just talk. Faith without works is dead. There's no other translation for dead biblically that I could find. That you
Right.
have to work out this faith that we have and have action behind it. And we can talk a good talk. You and I can sit here
Mhm.
and have wonderful conversation. And I love it, because you can actually dig deep and flesh out issues that need to be brought to light to have these discussions. But
Yeah.
you have to not only, this is where the sales pitch comes in. You not only have to talk about it, but when there's people that are listening, they have to actually act. They have
Right.
to. Joe said, "Time, talent, and treasures."
Mhm.
It's not just throwing money at a campaign. It's, are you going to come knock doors? I'll be
Yes.
there, right? I'll be knocking on doors to educate the 63rd Assembly District about what's going on. But who else is going to come join me?
Mhm.
That to me shows your resolve for change, not
Yeah.
just the comments or the Facebook communications. It's actually putting those feet on the pavement so that we can
Mhm.
see change in reality.
Well, I think that's an important thing to point out. I mean, posting up the memes is all fine and well, but oftentimes we're preaching to the choir.
Yep.
It's a whole nother story to, like I said, what I do here is I'm bringing out the candidate and I'm having the conversation in depth. But even for myself, I don't feel that's enough, which is one of the
Mhm.
reasons why I got involved with my county party. I'm now the vice chair of my county party
Excellent.
because I don't want
Mhm.
it to, and even that is not enough. I need
Mm.
more. Um, you know, but one of the ways that I serve, is to try to bring that information out to people. And, there are going to be candidates that I'm going to be looking at. Right now, I've endorsed one person this
Mhm.
entire race, and right now I'm trying to stay far away from endorsing anybody as possible.
Good idea.
Um, but I've endorsed Orlando Owens for the
Mhm.
state treasurer.
Mhm.
He's a solid guy. The fact that he's a friend of mine is just icing on the cake, but I think he's the right
Exactly.
person to take the Democrat, take them out.
Mhm.
But everyone else, I'm looking at all these candidates. I'm like, I like this guy for this reason. I don't like this guy for this reason. There's a lot of stuff with that. But eventually, if a candidate asks me, say, "Can you help me sign, get signatures?" You're damn right I'm going to do it because I got the reach to do it, you know,
Exactly.
and not just online, but in person and get that stuff
Mhm.
out there because this is what's going to help folks.
But that opportunity that you just described is perfect, because every single person, in my opinion, has the, I'd say, the right to put
Mhm.
their name on that ballot. It is not up to an individual to decide who is going to be on that ballot
Right.
come November. And I think you really said it really well, that you have your preference, right? I have my preference, and that is
Mhm.
great. We Just because we know what the Constitution says and we know what we want to do doesn't mean that we all agree.
Right.
And I think that's so critical, that if you look at the left and the Communist Party of America in 1949, you look at their vision, right?
Mhm.
They had a 60, maybe even 100-year vision of what they wanted to see America be
Yeah.
at that time. And I think as conservatives and the society that we built, right? Twitter and Instagram, everything has to be instant right now, 144 characters. And we want
30-second clips. Yeah.
it, yes, and we want it today. And this is the fun conversation we can get into our platform talking points. But when somebody asks me what am I going to do, I want to be able to put my platform on the mirror in front of me every day and
Mhm.
say that I am going to accomplish those tasks. When
Yeah.
I come back to you in 2 years, I don't want to tell you that I'm going to, let's pick a big, I'm going to introduce term limits. That
Mhm.
I, as one person, am not going to be able to accomplish that. I need many men and women, if that's what our goal is, right,
Yes.
to accomplish those goals. So I want to be as real to people as I can, because I want to be held accountable for what I said,
Yeah.
not what I have pie in the sky pointing at, which are fun talking points, but they don't actually get things done.
Well, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the idea of building relationships. If you got this idea and
Yep.
it's a good, solid idea,
Yes.
you build relationships, build consensus, and eventually get that out to the floor for a vote. So
Mhm.
I want to get to this comment here. This is a gentleman, his name's Lee, and he's
Sure.
out the Wapaka area. And here in the statement he mentioned, and well, the comment might be a little long. Let me see if I can pull that. Sometimes the comments get too long and it doesn't show
Yep.
everything. But what
Yep.
he said here is, I was told by my representative that the voting fraud was not an issue and not to push that in search of candidates. And we should
Hmm.
not hold Mr. Voss accountable for not pursuing the fraud. Is that wrong? I would like Mr. Steen to address this, to address his feelings toward this, please. So
Is
I'll put
that
it
wrong?
comment on
Yeah,
there and for a moment because it's covering like most of us here. But
it is. So that I guess I can quickly
yes,
comment
please.
very easily. um, so I actually drove. So I announced it's been a week. Yeah, it's
Yes.
been a week and a half. I announced on Monday night, and Tuesday, Justice Gableman was giving his report based on his 9-month review of the election integrity issue, if you will. So he looked at
Mhm.
Zuckerberg funding, and he looked at specifically Sheriff Smaling and Mike Llewell's investigation into the nursing home issues that went on. So after sitting in that courtroom, sorry, I guess it'd be a committee chamber, not a courtroom,
Yeah.
sitting in that chamber, I cannot imagine any person that has ears to hear could listen to the information that he gave and the facts that were presented and say there was no fraud. Like we have nothing to talk about when you just the 92,000 men and women who have lived their full lives and are in retirement housing, whether it's assisted living or a
Mhm.
complete full service facility. They went from 35% voting to 100%, 95 to 100% voter turnout. That one statistic. I'm going to try not to get too deep into this, but I told you my great grandma died at our house at 102 years old.
Certainly.
To think that her, her peers that live through life the same experiences that she's had,
Right.
and at the end of their lives that they're to me the most precious thing that they have when they can affect change in our country is their ability to vote. That
Right.
would be co-opted, and when it gets co-opted, that we don't even consider that a problem.
Mhm.
That scares me to death. So for a representative to say that's not Mr. Voss's prerogative, I guess, to attack this issue and to face it head on, I think it's depressing
To not
when
hold them accountable. Right.
when he is not being held accountable. And I've said this multiple times, not just it's we like to point fingers, right? We like to find one person and say that's the guy.
Right.
There are 61 other conservatives or Republicans, if you will, in
Mhm.
the assembly. There's not too many of them standing up saying, I see what Justice Gableman said. Let me look
Right.
into my district and see what happened. Maybe I should be supporting what Mr. Rantham was presenting, right? Maybe
Mhm.
that's a valid option, but we're not going to know until you actually bring it out into the light.
Well, I think a lot of times, when you look at what Timothy Rantham's putting out there as his claim to decertify, and he
Sure,
stops just short of saying Trump's going to be put back in office.
right,
And the way that I've likened this is like, well, you're not going to decertify it. Number
right,
one, there's no constitutional mechanism. Number two, even if you did decertify, let's say you got several states to decertify.
sure,
It's kind of like going to a store and buying something and saying, hey, I want to return it. And they're like, yeah, no refund, no exchange.
yep.
Congress
So
is not going to, they've already certified the election. But
and
that being said, though,
yep,
a lot of people are saying that, we can't go to 2022 unless we deal with 2020. And I'm like,
hmm
you can't deal with 2020 if you don't win in 2022.
yep.
And I think there's a lot of accountability that needs to be had. The
And
nursing home thing is just the tip of the spear on that one.
and it's so important. You said something really critical that when we want what I'm saying, and I've said this to multiple counties and county chairs, is I believe that we need to have what's called a roll call vote on the floor of the assembly.
Mhm.
I personally believe that decertification bill, just like Justice Gableman said, he said we have administrative failures. First, laws were broken, right? Somebody needs to go to jail. If
Yes,
nobody goes to jail,
100%.
this will not change. Okay, so if somebody doesn't go to jail, we're not going to change anything. But laws were broken and administrative rules were not followed. And there was broad strokes in the administrative rules that weren't clear. I understand all of that. But because we had those failures, we need to look at this critically. And the decertification, to me, that bill sitting out there says, let's have a roll call vote. And when we have a roll call vote, we don't have those on the assembly floor because everyone wants to hide behind the cloud of anonymity and have voice voting
Right.
so that we don't know who voted. But I believe the people deserve a roll call vote to determine, is my representative representing me?
Mhm.
Do the people of your county or your district, do they want those votes to be pulled back and at least look at what happened?
Right.
And I think to me, it's more of a litmus test. Like you said, I'm not pushing that far. I think it's truly listening to what Gableman said. It's a
Mhm.
litmus test to see, are our representatives truly actually representing us?
Well, I think that's an important thing to get those votes out into the public because, yeah, the idea of having these secret votes and everything, or private votes, however one wants to phrase it, it's like what? So you can't be held accountable for that. So
Yep.
you can go ahead and wheel and deal however you may do that. I
Hmm.
that personally is something I'm not cool with. But
Yep.
that does lead me to something, and I think you kind of already answered it, but I want to ask it anyway.
Go ahead.
Um, because I think there's two governing philosophies that are out there for representatives,
Hmm.
and I don't think either one is necessarily wrong. Because on the one hand, you have a group of people that believe, you know what? I'm running for this office. Here's what I believe. This is my platform. Here's how I'm going to vote. This is what I'm going to do. You vote for me. You're trusting that I'm going to do this based upon what I believe and everything else. That's one approach. The other approach is, hey, I'm here representing you guys. I'm gonna hold a town meeting like every 4 days or whatever it is, every 2 weeks, monthly,
Hmm.
whatever, Zoom calls, you name it. I'm gonna get your feedback and I'm gonna kind of get a feel for the public. And however the most of you guys are feeling, it's probably how I'm gonna go with. I may be wrong, I may be right, but those are the two biggest philosophies I see when it comes to representative, governance.
Hmm.
What's your thought process on that?
I am so glad we're having this conversation because I've heard it. I've never thought about that first option. And
Mhm.
it's a very, very valid option that I will lay forth as a leader, if you will,
Right.
my platform, and you will vote for that platform. So when it's funny because I've had these conversations over the last 3 years and said, I've learned something since I ran that my character, so my belief structure, I believe that life begins conception, period. That's not a questionable consideration for me. I got an engineering degree, and people say I'm 100% pro life, except 100% means 100%. So that beyond that,
Right.
there's certain core values that I have, and like you said, I maybe assumed that I was going to lay those values out there, and they were going to vote on whether or not they liked them or not.
Mhm.
But in my opinion, the character, my history, my life, my experience, what I've gone through, and what I've done and said I'm going to do in private life, if you will,
Yeah.
simply proves that I will do what you ask of me as a representative. So
Mhm.
my view is option two, that
Yeah.
we are to represent the public's choice in any matter, not necessarily bring up bills that I want that's good enough for me, but
Right.
that is a representative democracy, I guess, if you will.
Right. Well, I think it's, yeah, kind of getting a feel for the
Hmm.
people and stuff and what they think.
Yeah,
And I think it's an interesting segue to this next question here. And I want to get to something Lee says here in the chat room in a
sure.
minute because this is really a big thing. But one of the things that we see both in the assembly
Hmm.
and we see it in Congress too. Everybody hates the legislative body. Pick your state. Nobody likes their legislative body. Ask anybody do you like Congress? No, hate them all.
Hmm.
But everybody loves their congressman. Everybody loves their assemblyman.
Yep.
Where do you think the disconnect is there?
I
I
sorry,
think
I only
there's a big disconnect too, but
well, I only chuckle because somebody made a comment. I was talking, I think it was in Waukesha, and they said it's not we the people, it's we the party. And I really think you described the disconnect very simply, that when you go to Madison or you go to Washington, we have these things that exist called caucuses. And
right.
the caucus is where we actually hash out what needs to happen on the floor. So I I grew up that your handshake is your word, right? That's how I
Yes.
was taught. That's how I was raised. So I have I guess, an archaic philosophy of reality today because a lot of people don't understand that anymore.
Right.
It's pliable, it's moldable. Whatever you say can change at any moment. Truth, there's no truth. Sorry, I've
Your
got a
word
friend
is
that
your
has a
bond.
bump. Your word is your bond. I've got a
Yes.
friend that has a bumper sticker that says "Truth is the new hate speech," and it's it's a reality today.
Yeah.
So to back to your question, sorry. Um, those caucuses, when you go to the floor of the assembly, I did a little bit of digging, and I'm going to dive deeper here in the next couple months. Um, there are not too many dissenting votes on the floor of the assembly in Madison for sure,
Mhm.
because all of that is worked out in the caucus before you bring a bill to the floor.
Right.
And the disconnect lost
Mhm.
because the will of the party becomes priority. And we can talk about purple districts and red districts and like let's say we have an assemblyman that has a district that's maybe 55-60% conservative,
Right.
and he's on that line where if he votes a hard line issue, he might not get reelected.
Mhm.
But let's say myself, I'm in a 75-80% conservative district, I can vote hard line all day. Well,
Right.
I need to give up my values to protect his seat because we need to hold that control in the assembly. And I know I haven't experienced it from the inside, but having those discussions, to me, it nullifies the Constitution that we are supposed to be representing. We are
Right.
supposed to be a constitutional republic. And when you have those meetings to protect the party instead of the
Mhm.
people, I honestly believe it corrupts this amazing, amazing country that we have.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an element of strategy to that, and to some degree, as kind of an outsider looking in,
Hmm.
it kind of makes sense.
It
Do we
does.
want to die on this particular issue and then lose the assembly just to have the Democrats just run roughshod and do whatever they want? No, we don't want to do that. But do we really need majority whips and minority whips and everything saying you need to vote this way or you're not going to get you won't get a chairmanship, you won't get this, you won't get that. That's why I gotta agree with you on that, because it really pulls away from the representation because now I'm pressuring you to vote against what you believe, also that we can save a seat that's probably going to get lost next election cycle unless you get a better candidate up there.
And to that point, this has been brought up multiple times in the last 4 years, not just the last two.
Yeah.
We, as conservatives, we have been asked for my entire life, just help us elect a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican governor, a
Mhm.
Republican president. You put your time in, and we will protect your values and your rights. And in Wisconsin, we gave that hard effort, and we had it for 8 years, right? We put
Right.
in the time. Conservatives hit the road and knocked doors and made phone calls and put money in, and we had that. So what I'd like to point out is, as soon as Tony Evers was elected, I saw a collective assembly because I couldn't see a roll call vote.
Mhm.
I saw a collective assembly become the most pro-life assembly that I have seen in the history of the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And that one, we can talk about lots of other issues. That one issue to me proves exactly what I'm saying, that if it's politically convenient for a party to be pro-life,
Mhm.
we will be pro-life when we know it can't happen. But when we had the control of the House, the Assembly, and the governor, we did nothing. And by nothing, I shouldn't say that. I've got to clarify. We
Yeah.
did defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood only got $1 million a year for eight
Right.
years. I wish they would defund me. That would be amazing.
Well, there's something to what you said there because we see all that at the federal level as well too. Remember the last 2 years of Barack
Exactly.
Obama.
Yep.
Republicans took back the House, they took back the Senate, and they were passing all these bills to defund Obamacare. I mean, they were just
Mhm.
going all at it. They were
No,
and I think unfortunately it leads a lot of credence to the idea that you don't really want to do this. You just want an issue to run on. And you see it on the
exactly.
left, and unfortunately you see it on the right as well.
Right. And
It's pretty
and Ed, these are I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but
no,
these
please do.
conversations are so important because these are mental exercise, right? That this is preparing you, in my opinion, preparing me for what I'm applying for. This is the
Yes.
job I'm applying for. And if you can actually prepare yourself mentally to know that you know that you know what you believe, when it comes to putting it into practice, you are a step above because you're not thrown off guard when somebody throws a curveball at you.
Right.
And that is so important because in in this world of politics, if you will, there are so many curveballs that get thrown at you because there's always an agenda. It's not let's do what's right for the people. There's always another agenda. And that to me, it only drives the point further that
Yeah.
you need to go serve for a term because
Well,
there's so much pull.
and I think that is probably one of the most frustrating things for the average person. That's why so many people have the attitude of, why should I vote? My vote to matter because they feel that everything is agenda driven. Well, they're
Yep.
not really here for me. They
Mm-mm.
really could care less whether I live or die. And I'm
Yep.
like, dude, that is like grim. Like wow, I can get dark, but that's beyond me.
Yep.
I want to jump in the chat room here because you got an invitation here.
Okay.
And here to with the Wapaka County Republican Party. Now,
Sure.
I'm gonna speak about them for a moment because I will tell you this group here, these folks here, these folks are top notch. I had the opportunity to speak at was emceeing one of their events on September 11th,
Mm-hmm.
just this past year. Great organization, great turnout. They have a Lincoln Day, Reagan Day dinner here on in March. I think it's 4 or 5 p.m. Lee, if you
Mm-hmm.
can update us on that. But he mentioned, speaking about the party, please come to Wapaka March 26th for the Lincoln Reagan Trump dinner. You meet the most conservative Republicans in the state of Wisconsin. And like I said, these guys, when we look at parties that are county parties that are putting in work that are truly conservative in their values, their mission, and are just great
Mm-hmm.
people to be around, this
Mm.
is what I'm talking about right here. It's a
Hey
great
Lee, can you
organization.
make sure you send me a message on my website, either on the app or send me an email. I would be thrilled to check and make it up there. That'd be great.
Yeah, they're like I said, they're great people. They actually asked me to MC the event, so
Oh, good.
it's going to be awesome. But regular Joe Gigante from
Is he?
WSAU, he's going to be the keynote speaker there. And of course, I'm sure Kevin Nicholson, Rebecca
Mm-hmm.
Clayfish, Jimmy Ratham, either them or surrogates will be there as well. But it's just a great opportunity to connect with conservatives. And it's just a really great organization they have up there. I'm jealous because I live like just a county over from them. And
Ah,
it's like,
so
we got a lot of
close.
work to do here, a lot of work. But
Something to
it was
shoot for.
I'm very fortunate to work with them. But last couple minutes here, I want to give you kind of like, the your elevator pitch, your closeout, what you bring to the table. We could have this. We could probably, I honestly think we could probably do an easy 3 hour show. Honestly,
Easily.
it would be way
Easily.
too easy. But kind of throw it out there because and let me throw this back out here. Make sure you guys because if this is
Yep.
somebody who you believe in, I know money shouldn't matter in politics, but you know what? That's not the world we live in. Those flyers, those yard signs, gas, all that costs money. And if this is an individual you believe in, you got to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you hook them up 5, 10, whatever you can spare. A couple of recycled cans, it doesn't matter.
Mm-mm.
I'm not sure what aluminum's going for, but you get my point.
Well,
Everybody
there you go.
needs, needs that help.
Yep.
And this is one way that you can help and make things happen. So make sure you check out that website. Adam, I'm gonna let you have at it. And I was gonna pretend like, I'm part of the audience with some popcorn.
Excellent. Um, I have to thank Ed because seriously, when you have the ability to have these conversations with what I call everyday people, and I know Ed, you and I have some knowledge, but it, we are living in this world that is so torn apart, and that's so the word is divisive. But it's so much fun to be able to have these conversations to educate each other and learn back and forth. If I knew everything, I don't think you'd want me up here because we need somebody that's willing to learn and manipulate and train their brain to be able to educate themselves based on what people are saying. And I think that's so important. So thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. Go ahead. I saw
No, no,
you
go
pop
ahead, go
back
ahead, go ahead.
on. The
No.
website is really critical.
Mhm.
The steenforus.com, just STEEN for us.com. We are going to need volunteers from across the state. You and I talked about this for I
Yes.
don't know how an hour now. We are going to need feet on the ground, and I've got to explain why. As the person that I'm running against is the Speaker of the Assembly, they have control over the staff of the entire Capitol, the entire
Mhm.
building. At any point, anything he says goes. Money,
Right.
financially, time, it doesn't matter. So if we are going to counter that, we have to do it with education, with wisdom, yes, but it's going to take manpower. I will
Yep.
be knocking doors. I will be passing out literature, but I'm going to need your help. So there's a volunteer page, a get involved page. Just fill out your name, email, what you'd like to do, and we will be in touch with you to let you know what's going on. Really, the elevator speech is simple. Um, we have to clean up our elections. We have to dissolve WEC. The speaker said we're never going to dissolve WEC. There were laws that were broken. I cannot personally put someone in jail as a legislature. You have to know your role that you're applying for.
Right.
But I can guarantee you that when we pass laws or bills or statutes, they are going to have teeth. They're not just going to be a recommendation. They're going to have consequences tied to those bills. So we have to clean up our elections, period. Secondly, the educational system that we have is simply distraught through, I want to say no fault of our own, but almost through a lack of engagement. And the Department of Public Instruction has no legislative oversight. So the second main point is we really need to take the Department of Public Instruction legally. So there's a lawsuit that needs to be filed, and the legislature needs to gain control over the Department of Public Instruction so that we can actually have accountability. So the parents are working hard on the ground, and I am supporting them and helping them to control the educational system that they're sending their kids to, but we have to have the control from the top. Um, and really, last thing, I think we need to reintroduce. We've had two bills that were killed by some of our current legislators for constitutional carry, and I think
Oh
the,
yeah.
the inner cities are desperately needing support because their government in the local districts in the cities are actually, again, the funding for the police. You can't even if you wanted to hire 1,000 police.
I will say this much though on that, carrying conceal, great step.
Yep.
But I need constitutional carry because I'm gonna be honest with you. I need my sidearms.
Yep.
My favorite one, his name is American Express because I never leave home without him. Never. My best friend. Next to my dogs. Next to my
Yeah.
dogs, my best
Yep.
friend.
So that
Adam, I
go ahead.
can't thank you enough for being on here. It's truly a pleasure. I mean, you've gone over like several topics here in the last like 2 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, this could be really a 3 hour show. And
Sorry. I
I have
apologize.
like there's like a guest in here right now, Hilario. He's like, do a 3 hour show. He lives through the 3 hour programs. But wow. No,
We
it
can
was
do it
just
again. Yeah, no, we can do it again.
anytime, anytime you are always welcome back here because I think it's the number of topics, everything.
Mhm.
And I gotta tell you, I a lot of stuff you're talking about, I really dig. I love the fact that you talk about constitutional principles. Not only do you talk about the Constitution, but you're talking Federalist Papers, anti-Federalist Papers.
Mhm,
You're talking about the
mhm.
documents, that were the articles that were in the debate of the Constitution during the
Yep,
convention. Which a
yep.
lot of people have very little knowledge about, and the fact that you
Mhm.
have a reference point to that, hats off to you on that. I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to reiterate it again, but that if you guys would like to chat or you've got questions, please, please, please reach out. Fill out there's Facebook Messenger, there's Instagram, all kinds of stuff. Just reach out to me so that I can give you answers if I didn't answer everything. And I'd love to be in touch, but make sure you at least hit that donation button once or twice. I appreciate it.
All right, Adam, I'm going to cut you out here, but like I said, I will put
Mhm.
this up. We'll have this up on Rumble. We'll have it on BitChute,
Mhm.
Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and every other podcast aggregator that's out there. And feel free to take a copy of this and use it as you need to. I really enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to having more conversations with you, sir. Let me know if there's anything I do to help you out.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, Ed. Thank you.
You too. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Steen, running for the 63rd Assembly District. Another phenomenal conversation. These are the conversations I want to bring to you. Literally everybody across the board. Obviously, we just had Adam on. If Robin Vos was interested, I'd have him on just the same to have these conversations. But we're looking forward to having more conversations. We're going to have Aaron Melby, who's going to be running for school district board here in the Burlington area. If I recall correctly, that's going to be next Thursday. We have several people that we're in conversations with right now. Paul Farrow, who's the chairman for RPW. I'm still working to get in contact with Kevin Nicholson and his campaign. We'll definitely bring back on Orlando Owens later on. We have a lot more conversations coming out here, and I really hope you guys are going to stick around, enjoy these conversations. Like, smash that button, share these episodes out. Anything you guys can do to help the conversation go out there. Yes, it certainly helps me to get the name and everything out there, but more importantly, it gives you, the people, the information that is so incredibly needed in this day and era when people are just paying attention to headlines but not getting into the story. People watch video, and I want to thank you guys for joining in here tonight. So on that note, good night. God bless you. God bless the USA. God bless Wisconsin. And I'm out.